Welcome back to Restore Thrive. I'm Dr. Tim Cummings and we're talking about movement archetypes. Movement archetypes are the basic start and finish positions that every athlete and every human being should be able to get into. And what we find is if you have incomplete mechanics and you can't get into these basic movement patterns or shapes, we know that you're at higher risk for injury. Today we're going to talk about lower body movement archetypes, and we're going to start with one of the most foundational movements, the squat. So the easiest way to assess this is to find a mirror or find a friend who can take a picture of you in your squat position. What we like to do is just see how people do a body weight squat. So feet are going to be around shoulder width apart or slightly wider. Toes are going to be pointed forward. You're tall with the upper body. And what we should be able to do from here is reach forward with our arms, lean forward with our upper body, and sit back through our hips. At the bottom position, we should see our toes are still pointed forward. They're on the ground. Our knees are in line with our feet or slightly outside of our feet, not in this knee in, knock knee position. And then from the side, when we get into this shape, again, we can lean forward, but we want to see that that hip crease is even with or slightly lower than the bend in the knees, that your back is straight, that your chin is down, and your head is in line with the rest of your spine. Now, if you're not able to get to that depth, what we want to try to do is open up that hip joint and make sure we're dealing with both joint limitations and soft tissue restrictions. So we're going to use our jump stretch band here attached to this pole to deal with any hip joint limitation that you might have. So what I'll do here is put this band around my right hip all the way up in my groin. I'll step out until I have a little bit of tension in the band. The band is going to go straight out to the side in a lateral direction here. And then I'll kick my free leg out behind me. So this is going to look a little bit like a pigeon pose, but we're not going to collapse through our back or through our upper body. We're simply going to just rock that hip back and forth, back towards your heel, and then straight forward, trying to keep some tension through your abs. So we're really keeping that integrity of the spine intact, and we're replicating that bottom position of the squat where that hip passes below the crease of the knee. We want to make sure as we do this that we're not feeling any pinching in the front of the hip. That's why it's important to have a heavy band here to clear some space through that hip joint. And you want to rock this back and forth, ideally for 2 minutes, to really get that excursion of the hip joint tissue. Once you've done that on one side, go ahead and repeat that on the other side. That's going to deal with any stiffness in the hip joint capsule itself. Now, the other piece we see that can be tight is this whole massive tissue around the outside of your hip, from your hip flexor all the way back into your high glute. When these things get bound up, it's hard for that hip to function the way it's supposed to when you're trying to close down space in that end range position. So what we'll do here is use the ball on the floor and create some pressure through first that hip flexor. So we'll get right under that hip bone, place the ball right there, and then pin it on the ground. Now what you'll notice here is I have my elbow up underneath my shoulder. This allows me a little more room and a little less pressure on the ball. If you can lay like this and you don't feel any sort of tension or discomfort, the full finish position here is being all the way down on your side. Here we've got the full weight of your body on the ball, and you should be able to take a full breath in and out. And you can simply start to roll forward and backwards over the ball on that tissue. And again, normal tissue doesn't hurt to compress, even under high load. So this shouldn't be uncomfortable. If it is, we want to go up to that point of tension or restriction and come off of it and continue to work at that until that starts to open up and feel a little less uncomfortable. From here, I can simply start to bring that ball around the outside of my hip, get more over onto my back. I'm going to keep this leg laid out to keep some pressure here, and I can again add a little bit of rotation side to side. Again, it shouldn't hurt to compress. If it does, you keep rolling back and forth until that starts to ease up. If it's really tight, you can stop, take a big breath in, and hold that breath. Try to push the ball out and then exhale Let your hip relax, let that ball dig in a little bit more. You can do that for 3 or 4 rounds. That's our simple contract, relax technique. And we want to be able to bring that all the way to the back side of the hip here. Drop that leg out, even drop that other leg over. Add that full weight of your lower body into the ball and compress that tissue and work on that until that starts to feel like just a normal stretch without any sort of tenderness or soreness in that tissue. So once you've done that, make sure you get back up and retest, check that squat position, make sure you can get your hips below the crease of your knees, you can keep your back straight. Anytime you're doing any sort of stretch, any sort of mobilization, that test retest model is a really effective way to assess, is what I'm doing actually working? And if we're trying to improve our range of motion, we should see improvement after we've done the intervention. So give these mobilizations a try. If you have more questions about how to improve your squat or your lower body mobility, you can find us at RestoreThrive.com.